Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Lakers Detailed. I am your host, Vinay, and I have my co host with me here, Raj. Tonight is June 19th. It is the week of the draft, and a lot has happened in the few days that have gone since our last episode that we really need to get into. Some of it is Laker related, some of it is Laker adjacent, and then we're going to play in the second half of or our last topic. We're gonna play a game called Flip My Contract. It's gonna be a kind of like a Flip My House themed. If you're any of those folks who like to watch those home and garden TV shows where they fix up stuff, but we're gonna play a game of Flip My Contract, and we're gonna do it with some of the Laker players that we have on our current roster. But before we jump into our first topic, Raj, how are you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. It feels like the NBA is back. We got the blockbuster trade, the
Yeah.
Bradley Beal deal. We have the draft coming up, which is always exciting because that means summer league is close.
Yes.
And yeah, it feels like basketball is returning. Got a little bit of some time off. The finals ended a few weeks ago, but I'm excited, man. A lot of fun, conversations to be had with this coming week.
Yeah, we just had Father's Day weekend, so with happy belated Father's Day to all the dads that tune in,
Yes.
possibly listen to us in their car rides as they commute to drop their. Oh, it's summer vacation for probably a lot of them, but as they go to work. So shout out to the dads out there. But yeah, it was a nice break, but it really wasn't a break because on Saturday some news broke about
Yep.
Bradley Beal and him getting traded and the standoff that he was having, with the Wizards front office. But before we get into that, there's some real beef that we have to actually get into, and so we're gonna hit that first. And the first topic I wanted to get into is this beef that Michael Malone. Actually, I'm going to call him Mike Malone because apparently he doesn't like being called Mike. So I'm just going to call him that for the sake of it.
Sure.
Mike Malone's beef with the Lakers. So obviously it was a big thing for a little while. A lot of at the celebration, there were people, Nuggets executives talking about the Lakers, and it was bizarre because it was just like this is supposed to be like a game of like you didn't even play us in the finals. Like this should be like a celebration for you guys, but that obviously a lot of people were mentioning us, and I get it. You beat the Lakers, legacy
Right.
franchise, clamor, blah blah blah, and I get it. But the beef didn't start there, or sorry, it didn't end there. If LeBron's overseas watching a soccer game, very visible in public,
Yep.
and he puts out an IG post. I don't have it here in front of me, but basically ends the IG post saying more or less, this is your time in the light, but remember I am the sun. And that's like a thing. That was like a big thing that like
Ooh, what a
dominated Twitter.
bar.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was a bar. It was really good. But like usually Braun doesn't respond to stuff like that. And for him to
No.
respond to it, I was like, oh, okay. He's actually kind of irritated because like they've been chirping since they beat us, and he hasn't
Yeah.
said anything. So I thought it was fascinating. What did you think about that? Like that just Braun, like everything's like beneath him. So for him to even take time out and put the Instagram post out is just what did you think of that?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Definitely that got to him. The Nuggets, I mean, honestly, it's just Mike Malone, right? Really, I mean, if you look at it, and it's Bruce Brown a little bit. Bruce
Yeah.
Brown did most of his talking during the series, but I think Mike Malone wore the "put it in your pipe and smoke it" in the parade. Like that was his parade shirt. Was the "put it in your pipe and smoke it"? Which he said during the Lakers series. I don't know. It's strange. I think it tells you where which series Denver was most proud of to
Yeah.
win. Like I think, that showed a lot too. And look, Michael Malone won. He's allowed to talk whatever mess he wants, to say any proclamations he wants to make during the parade. And he was more intoxicated than I think I've ever seen a coach during a during a championship parade. But yeah, I thought LeBron responding, you could tell like LeBron was overseas on vacation. I'm sure the Nuggets weren't on his mind. I'm sure the Lakers weren't really on his mind. And for him to respond, I mean, that was, you don't have the post and I don't have it either, but it was a pretty lengthy like
Yeah.
post.
Let
He,
me,
he
I'll
put
pull it
some
up while you're talking. Yeah. Let me
he
pull it
puts
up.
he put some time into responding. I thought that was interesting, but yeah, Mike Malone, they won. It's funny because their star Jokic just does not say anything. He just quietly goes about his business, and that's fine. He lets his production talk, and Mike Malone sees that as his role on that team. So he decides that he has to come out in the forefront and kind of speak for the guys that won't. Jamal Murray kind of can do that as well. But I thought, LeBron responding showed that like he was a little bothered by it, and that's fine. I want him to be like, you should be like. They swept us as close as it was. Close
Yes.
sweep, Vinay, isn't in my vocabulary. Like that just feels wrong to say out loud. You know what I mean? It feels like an oxymoron. A close sweep. Like you can't tell anybody that. Like imagine going to LeBron. Like, that's a close sweep. Like he'll kick you out of the building. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And he said in post game, he's like, I'm not here to lose in the Western
yeah,
Conference Finals. Like I'm trying to get it to the mountaintop. So
yeah,
it bothered him for sure.
100%. And we've spoken about this before. I think LeBron. I think he believed that they could win it all. Like I
Yeah.
really believe that he thought that. So I'm sure Mike Malone rubbing it in, throwing salt on the sweep wound doesn't help. And
Yeah.
even if he's overseas, 12-hour time difference, he's gonna respond, and he did. So I thought that was
Yeah.
cute.
Yeah, so I have the quote here for the folks
All right.
that need a refresher. And the quote goes like this. This is from LeBron's Instagram, and it's a picture of him waving a flag. I think for the end or the start of the race that he was attending. And so the
Mm-hmm.
caption reads like this: In Europe, for the last past few weeks, minding my business, and I hear I'm on your mind that much, huh? I mean, I guess I see why, but wave the flag on these lames. Please make being player cool again, because the lame machine is at an all-time high. So when I read that, I was like, okay, the lame machine is at an all-time. I was like, all right, well, I'm an old guy. He's an old guy, so I get it. We'll give him a pass. But
Sure.
the bar shows up right here. He goes, enjoy your light, but just know I'm the sun. I stay on forever. And that was great. That was a great way for him to like
Let,
conclude
let
it.
me let me ask
Yeah,
you
go.
this: Do you think this was like produced by Spring Hill Entertainment? Like this was like. Because it's so perfect, it's so good. It feels it was timed right. The final bar was perfect. It
It was
was.
great. Yeah.
I would be mad if it wasn't. I wouldn't be mad if it wasn't. It was absolutely like a chef's kiss at the end with that quote. So
I feel like that last sentence definitely got workshopped by more than just LeBron. I think he had, he might have had some help because the one prior to this is so silly. We're doing analysis of it, but I mean, I mean,
no, yeah,
Lakers content. This is what it is. Because the line before that is, please make being player again cool. Sorry, please
yeah,
make being player cool again because the lame
sure,
machine is at an all-time high. So I was like, the lame machine. I was like, we got a better insult than that, but I think he closed it out strong. It was really good. But I mean, he's right. He's like in Europe, kind of doing his own thing on vacation, and it's just like he's still hearing about him. Like the shots at him, and obviously, a lot of times like the shots weren't really at him. The shots were at the Lakers as an organization. So like from a fan point of view, it's kind of cool that like Braun actually responded back. Because like, dude, I mean, we can only do so much on Twitter when we're dunking on, Nuggets fans about, whatever the historical record is between it. But, I was going to say, I saw this question get kind of posed, and I wanted
mm,
to know what your thought about it was. Like, I think it's good for basketball. Like, I know it's annoying because you're on the losing end of it, but I think it's good for basketball when teams carry like beefs like
oh
this. The
yeah,
Lakers historically, back to Kobe's era, have knocked the Nuggets out of the playoffs
yep,
in upper rounds. So it's like this actually means a lot to the Nuggets, and it should, to knock out the team that's always knocked you out. Like, what do you think about it? Is that good? Like, I think that's great for basketball because it like brings up these rivalries, and it's like a reminder that these teams have way more history than if you just
yeah.
started watching basketball like in 2015 or something.
100%. And look, I think Malone isn't really going at LeBron James. Like we're framing it as a beef
Yeah,
between those two, but Malone has been pretty clear that his beef is with NBA media. Now that's
yeah,
a very broad spectrum to, paint the brush on. You could go in a lot of avenues with that, but I think his main point is like Jokic just won back-to-back MVPs.
yeah,
My team is really freaking good. And your whole conversation was on Rui Hachimura after game one. You know what I mean? Like that's the stuff that he internalized, and you could see that come out during the parade. So that's number one to me. I don't think Mike Malone is really like, yeah, LeBron James sucks. We destroyed him, or and all that. So, and obviously they picked on D'Lo during that series and yada yada. But no, I think it's great. Like I think rivalries are what make the NBA what they are. We've said that it might be too friendly a league sometimes. Like hopefully the Suns and the Mavs have some type of you can see there's real like hatred there when those guys play. There's a real animosity between the teams when those
Yeah.
dudes go at it, and the playoffs kind of breed that type of stuff, right? You can't like that's not something you can manufacture to me in the regular season. And you brought up beating the Denver Nuggets in we beat them, I believe, in 2009 and 2010. Did we beat them both? I forgot if we beat them in 2010 as well, but I believe we knocked them out. Oh no, I'm sorry, 2009 and 2020 is when we beat them. So I'm sure some of that was internalized from 2020. Mike Malone obviously was coaching that team. Jokic, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. all involved in that series. They had to hear the Lakers get all the news during that time, so I'm sure they kept that. But yeah, I think it's great, man. I hope rivalries continue. I just know, like, if Mike Malone went at Jimmy Butler, it wouldn't hit the same, right? It just would not. It would not cross airways the way that, like, putting in your pipe and smoke it, or where's D'Angelo Russell? Like, you can't really do that like with the Heat, really. It wouldn't really it wouldn't hit the media the same. So I understand why he did it with the Lakers, and more props to him. We're gonna see him next year, and hopefully we can carry some of that with us. But I think it's great for the game, man. You need more rivalries. All this buddy stuff, like that's not really what the league should be. Even though teams are starting to team up a little bit more, with this Bradley Beal stuff and stuff like that. But no, I think it's great, man. Rivalries are what this game's all about.
Yeah, and then I agree. I think it's an interesting phenomenon, and I think like the media folks, because they're so invested in the teams. Like I've seen some Denver media folks, like not official Denver media, but like people around local media, like that would be like around like what we would be to Lakers, like with Lakers detailed, like be very chatty in the wake of them winning. I think that's just kind of what it is. That's sort of what makes it fun. Obviously, as long as we don't go too far with it and stuff like that. So it's cool. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a great way to bridge the gap between the new fans and the old fans. Like, oh, if you didn't watch Kobe and what we did to Carmelo and that Chauncey Billups team with Carmelo and all those other guys, like that team was really good and we still knocked them out. And they were not happy about that. That was the George Karl team too at the time. So that was good. It was just cool to see Bron say something about it. Usually he's pretty. Like I said, it's always beneath him, so it was kind of cool to see him do something like that.
I'm sure he wasn't trying to respond. It just was absolutely consistent. Like it was like our series was 2 rounds ago, and so I'm sure, but like I don't think he's going or has any personal problem with Mike Malone.
I don't think so. Yeah,
he's been very complimentary of him. You can find I think tweets about that as well. Especially even when Mike Malone left Sacramento, I think he was very complimentary of him. So this is a nice little fun jab back and forth, which we'll see if that continues on to next year.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of continuing on, obviously that should hopefully put a button on at least the playoff related stuff as it goes on. Now that we're focused on the off season, and there has been movement in the off season. Obviously, you mentioned the Bradley Beal thing, which we'll get to right now. But right before we do that, obviously the initial news was Frank Vogel getting the job after Monty Williams got let go with the Suns. But Frank Vogel hasn't stopped there. Frank has pretty much started recruiting literally everybody who was on the Lakers assistant bench prior to Darvin Ham. So basically his last year. So he's taking David Fizdale. Recently, he just took John Pastoric, Greg St. John, who went with Jason Kidd to the Mavs, who left his post with the Mavs just this offseason, is now with Frank over in Phoenix. Frank is assembling basically the same, Lionel Hollins hasn't been mentioned yet, but he may show up. His name may show up at some point, depending on what his health looks like and whatnot. But he's basically recruiting almost every single guy that was on his assistant bench over in LA. What do you think about that? Like, you think I think he's honestly just going to be trying to run the same. The Suns have to make some more moves, like the whole where's DeAndre Ayton going? It doesn't make sense. They literally have all their cap committed to 4 people and nobody else on the roster. Like, there's clearly going to be another move coming after this Brad trade. But I think Frank is going to try and assemble like a type of defense like he had in LA. What do you think about like him hiring all these assistants? What do you think about the Lakers letting the assistants go?
Yeah.
That's probably a better
Well,
question.
before we get there, it was funny. If you remember when Frank Vogel got hired here, right?
Yeah,
And I went back and looked. I wrote, which was Lonzo Wire at the time. I think it's like Bulls Wire or something now. But I wrote, how does Lonzo Ball fit in with Frank Vogel's offense, right? And Frank Vogel was coming from Orlando at the time, and so he had like Alfred Payton, who was like a kind of similar mold to Lonzo. And that day, people forget it was the Magic Johnson just tearing
yeah,
tearing the organization into the fire. And Frank Vogel just had to sit up there and get questions on a team that really he never coached, right? Because like
yeah,
it was the Lonzo team, then all of a sudden right away they go and get Anthony Davis. So I thought it was just fascinating to see how like now again he gets a team that just gets absolutely stripped down, right? Of what it was. There was a core of what the Phoenix Suns were,
yeah,
and that is all gone. Monty Williams is gone. Chris Paul is gone. The Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnsons are all gone. You have a Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and DeAndre Ayton, which is just such a fascinating thing to me how, Frank Vogel kind of navigates that. But yeah, Frank Vogel had a year off. I'm sure he wasn't just, he's a hoop head, he's a
yeah,
film guy, he's a film nut, and he's a schedule planner. So I'm sure he was planning he was going to get another job. I think that was clear. I think he was
yeah,
going to get another head coaching opportunity. And he knew that like when he gone, hey, this worked, right?
yeah,
Like this kind of worked in 2020 and even 2021 to a lesser extent. So he probably wanted to recreate all those, coaches, and he went and got Miles Simon and John Pastoric, and he, basically the same coaches without Phil Handy,
yeah,
with Kevin
yeah.
Young.
It's
Uh,
Fizdale. He's got John Lucas.
yep,
Shoot, like I said, Greg St. John. He left Dallas and is now over there. He's got almost everybody other than Phil Handy that was on there. And if they
yeah,
announce Lionel Hollins, then he's basically, and obviously Jason Kidd's still in Dallas, so he can't be there.
yep,
But it seems like they're using Kevin. Like if Frank was the defensive guy and
yeah,
and Kidd was the offensive guy, then it
exactly.
seems like like Frank is going to be the defensive guy here. And then, obviously, Kevin Young is probably going to hold the offense,
Yeah.
but we might as well just get right into it. Like
Well,
how much offense are you really going to have to coach when you
that that's
have Brad?
that
Yeah,
that's what I was about to say. I'm saying like if you have Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant, like there's not much creativity you need to
Mhm.
throw on the floor. Those guys are gonna figure it out whether DeAndre Ayton's there or not, whether they move him for multiple pieces. I think the offense is set. Kevin Young is a brilliant offensive mind. I think Frank Vogel's there to make them defend at a somewhat baseline level.
Yeah,
I think he's going to try to do that. We'll see if they have the bigs necessary for that. Phoenix has very limited options to kind of build their team out, but I expect them to win a ton of games, at least in the regular season. Especially if they stay healthy. And good for Frank. He got another. I always think though, Vinay. I always think about this. It's tough to like go into a job and right away have day one like
yeah,
title or bust expectations. I think that's rough. I think that's a really tough way. Frank Vogel had day one title expectations, won the title, and was still out of a job 3 years later. Like that's how tough those situations are
yes,
to me. And I think Phoenix is another example of that, right? Where like Frank Vogel can go in, he can win the title in year one, and in 3 years later could be doing this whole carousel again, trying to find another team. Like it's just how these win now situations go. So I think that I think that's interesting that this is the job he took, and you kind of versus that Monty Williams, who just took a 5-year deal with a Pistons team that they don't expect to
for
win for a little
double
while.
for
So
double the money. He's
yeah,
more than double the money that Frank took. That the other thing is also like you and I were talking about this offline. Like when they hired Frank, it was very clear that I like. There's also a little bit of reinforcement with the hire with Phoenix
mm,
now, especially in hindsight, looking at the Beal trade. No, I think a lot of times, folks, there was a lot of contention within like Lakers Twitter that like who's really running the off. Like we would get on Frank about the offense all the time. Why
hmm
are you playing Rondo? Why are you doing this? Why are we not doing it? And it's the same thing happened the very following year. Obviously, Russ made things much more difficult. That cap, we don't have to get into all that stuff. That was the difficult part. And then even this year, like the last 3 years, the consistent, I think, maybe unfair to some degree, and I probably contributed to it as well, especially the second year. Um, there's probably been some unfair blame put on the coaches to remedy an issue with the stars. So when the stars are either unavailable or playing below their expectations, they're or significantly below their expectations, like fans automatically yell at the coach. And
right,
I thought it was so funny because I saw this clip that that uninterrupted pod, I think, or
Mm.
that show or whatever the barbershop show is that LeBron has. And there's that
Oh, the
clip of
shop.
Ty Lue saying
Oh, yes.
like you guys are watching the same. And I remember you and I said the same thing. I was just like, bro, what are they saying in the film room? Because we're watching the tape and we know what
Right.
the issue is. Like, you can't not like act like you don't know what you're seeing. So somebody else has to say it. Maybe like the coach has already said it so many times, and the players have to hold themselves accountable. But the point I was trying to make is like when Frank was with the Lakers, I thought he wasn't really coaching the offense. I don't think that was his core responsibility because I think
Sure.
we had a veteran-led group. Rondo, a high IQ guy. LeBron James, the jokes about him being a coach basically on the floor is, Mike Brown came out and said that he's LeBron literally run a timeout once before and whatnot. And I think it was a story about like when Mike Malone was with the Cavs too at the same time. And so, like if his job was to watch the tape, keep the offense ready, like reinforce the small principles and like
Yeah.
be like a coach that manages the egos or just manages like the personalities and the complexion of the locker, mood of the locker, like he did his job. And obviously it got much more dicey the second year with Russ there and then just everybody getting hurt that second year. But now you look at him in Phoenix, like if his job is to make sure that he constructs enough schematically good offense, even if it's just average, to help support these three guys and make it so that all they have to kind of do is score and minimize just kind of how much effort they have to put in on the defensive end or be efficient with it. Sort of makes sense. Like
Yeah.
I think he's comfortable with doing it. He did it in LA. I don't
r-
see any difference for him in Phoenix.
Right. And look, so I was higher on Vogel than I think maybe even consensus. I think people were
Yeah,
ready for him to go, and I was kind of preaching like LeBron and AD just aren't playing. Like, like
yeah,
that's why we're not winning. But a couple guys that I tweeted this out, and he gets a lot of jokes for the Avery Bradley stuff, and some of it is warranted, right? Avery
yeah,
Bradley, will play even if he has the dream team as his roster. Avery Bradley's gonna start. But
yep.
like he got a guy who was out of the league before that, really, and got out of the league after that. You got that guy starting on a
Mm-hmm.
60-win team. Got that guy really believing that he's like their point of attack special defender,
Yeah.
and then building a system around to where that works. And obviously that system is around Anthony Davis's brilliance, but you got a starting next to it. And the other things I bring up, we just watched KCP start for another finals team and win. Do you remember KCP under Luke Walton? Like that was a totally different KCP than we
Right.
got under Frank Vogel, right? And Frank Vogel realized, hey man, this dude is fast as hell. Like he's quick, he can run the floor really well. So I'm gonna have him just run in transition. We're gonna simplify the game for him. I remember when KCP was under Luke, remember that shot he took to like win the game and Kobe walks off. Remember
Yeah.
like he was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
right.
The air ball.
Exactly. Yeah. Frank
Yeah.
Vogel's like you're not running any real pick and rolls. You're running
Yeah.
all handoffs. Dwight Howard has a screen free. Anthony Davis has a screen free. Those are like little things that like I'm not sure if that's all Frank Vogel. I'm just like I watched KCP develop as a player, and he's been in the league I think 4 years before he got to the Lakers. Go watch Kyle Kuzma under Luke Walton as a defender, and then go watch him under Vogel as a defender.
Big
Like those
difference. Yeah.
those are jumps to me that we don't really speak on because LeBron and AD were so brilliant during the title run. But those are stuff that I was bringing up. But look at Dwight Howard's career under Frank Vogel, and then look at it, after that. And obviously Dwight returned and was probably more washed than he, was for the league. But
Mhm.
just like those are the things to me that like I was kind of higher on Vogel for. So I think he'll be fine. I do think this is a tricky situation. You have a bunch of stars who I think it's going to fit brilliantly, but I think in the playoffs some skill sets overlap, and defensive identities have to be forged, right? That those have to be cemented in a place where all three of those guys. KD's been a rim protector in Brooklyn, but I think on this team he's going to have even more defensive responsibility, and I think that's what Vogel's being paid to do. He got a 5-year deal, I believe, from Phoenix.
Yeah. I think
If I
a
remember
5-year,
correct.
30 million, 5-year,
Yeah,
35 million or something like that. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, no, but I'm on board with you. I think, when Vogel got hired, I was pretty confident that Chris Paul was out. Because I knew Monty was his biggest, like Monty was like Chris Paul's biggest advocate, and he always
Sure.
has been. And it's other stuff with Chris Paul, anyways. But I thought Aiton had a chance. But then once they made the Brad trade, I was like, oh, okay, I don't think Aiton's going to be here anymore. And from what I've been hearing behind the scenes about just kind of what they're trying to do and stuff like that, I think Aiton also kind of knows that he's possibly on his way out, and it's doesn't really make sense to have four guys, that much salary committed to four guys, and to fill out the rest of the roster with minimum. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Ayton get moved to a team for 2 to 3 guys, like Russ did. But obviously Ayton's a great young player. I don't know who reported, it was either Windhorst or Woj, that like after the Brad trade happened, like the Suns started getting a bunch of calls from teams around the league for Ayton, and just to gauge kind of what it would take to get something like him.
Yeah.
So I won't be surprised if the rest of the signings, because they still have guys like TJ Warren and stuff like that they can just still re-sign and bring him back. And they won't have like Terrence
Right.
Ross. He's not going to have a market, so you can just bring him back pretty easy. I wouldn't be surprised if they trade Ayton for like a bunch of defensive wings and like a real rim protecting center, maybe a point guard. Yeah, defense board. Go ahead.
See, I've heard this, and I think Ayton's super polarizing. Like, I think you can ask 20 people about Ayton, you get 20 different responses. Like, he's already making the max, right? So I don't know what his motivation, I guess, would be now. Let me ask you, because I think Ayton has all the talent in the world. I just like big men who are offensive lenient, who aren't like, I don't want to say generational. I think that word gets thrown around a lot, but the top like centers in the league that are offensive centered. I think that's a really like tough place to be as a big man. Like if you're not a defensive focused big man, your offense needs to be like special.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. And Ayton's not that, at least not yet. Right. So like, I'm not sure what team is looking at Ayton like, oh, he's available. Let's give actual real pieces for him. That's my question there, because I've heard this a lot. I've heard the trading Ayton for depth, which I feel like if that was an option, that would have been done. Like, so like I don't know where I guess I'm not where you at with Ayton, but like, do you see that as his market? I just like when I see DeAndre Ayton as a guy like on a team that was trying to win. You have a team in Phoenix that is legitimately trying to win. If Ayton is good, I think that's a better option for them. I understand the money part of it, but you need a big man. And I think Jock Landale's not enough. You just watch Nikola Jokic play. Like, you need a big man who can survive those type of minutes. I'm just wondering where Ayton kind of falls in that for you, because I've heard that as well. I don't know. Like, are you getting Miles Turner back for DeAndre Ayton? I'm not sure.
I mean, you might. We do know that Indiana did give DeAndre Ayton that offer sheet, but from what I've heard, Miles Turner and Tyrese Halliburton are like really good friends. Like they're like close buddies. But that may not stop the business if Indiana really wants DeAndre Ayton. I get what you're saying. He doesn't.
We all watch the same playoffs, you know what I mean? Like we all just watch the same film of DeAndre Ayton, like watching the ball 5 times as it sits on the rim. Not to single out one play. It's just a mentality to me of him where he wants to be this center where the offense is maybe not prioritized to him, to where he's like one of those not one option, but he's one of the options in the set, not where he's just pick and rolling every play, right? That's obviously not what he sees himself as. I'm not saying he has to. It's just, where do you fit that in a winning team or a team trying to build, right? If you're a bad team, is Ayton a guy you just throw in and maybe he gets 20 and 10 for you? But then do they have the pieces Phoenix wants? So
right. Yeah. Sure. So one of the things I kind of think about is there are teams out there that don't do a very good job finding big men who could even put up 15 and 10 every night. And sometimes that's an issue for them. So like one of the things that I've always thought about is like in basketball, like even when I played basketball, like in high school or whatever, like big men are very moody. Like they have they know that, some of the guys that can be, they know they need to be given the ball, and like, because they're just that good. Like Jokic, he's a point center, so he brings up the ball off the rebound, so it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
But most big men, including guys like Anthony Davis, need to be fed the ball. And I think the word fed has like this negative connotation for big men, because it's like you're not capable of scoring on your own. And that's not really what it is, but it's like, it's more like, maybe the moody's not the right word. The word I'd probably say is big men in the NBA have a very thankless role in the modern NBA.
Yep.
They're expected to screen hard every time. They're expected to rebound every single time. And they're almost never guaranteed a consistent amount of looks if they do that all the time. Just because it could be a defensive thing, or it could be that you're playing with a guy who just is hot and he's making every shot, so he's not going to give you the ball, or whatever it is. And it is a very difficult position, I think, to manage ego wise, because there are times where Ayton has looked phenomenal because they continue feeding him, and then there are times where he looks disengaged. And there's sometimes where he's just getting his butt kicked by whoever's like Ivica Zubac or somebody like that is kicking his ass up and down the floor. So it's like that sort of stuff happens too. But like I've always thought that like big men, like that you have to always be aware of their mood. You have to like always reinforce that no, you're still important. Like we kind of saw that with like JaVale, we saw it with Dwight. Like they played smaller roles, but like it mattered to them that they
Yeah.
were like the big dog, on the floor. Like even Andre Drummond didn't take very kindly to being benched for one game. Like Marcus Gasol didn't take kindly, even though they knew that they were on, like one's a younger guy, one's an older guy, might be out of the league. So like it's just a weird thing with big dudes in the NBA. They are much more moodier. They require more reinforcement. And I thought, like I know he didn't really have a great series against the Nuggets, and that clip went viral with him just kind of watching his teammates fight to the death for rebounds, and he was just watching them. And I think he acknowledged it too. He like commented on that post, whatever it was. But I think like he was very disengaged with his Suns team, and I think that did do a lot for how much he wanted to like do the extra stuff for the team. Like Ayton's a great screener. He's actually a great rim runner. And, it's tough when you have a guy like Chris Paul who plays at a different speed that you play at. Chris Paul is snaking screens to go to the right elbow, and Ayton is diving to the rim. So Chris Paul doesn't necessarily, if he's not going to the rim, like, maybe a guy like Russ would, you're not putting any pressure on the rim. You're not getting the ball to Ayton. So it just makes things tricky sometimes.
Yeah. And if you remember in the 2021 playoffs, like he killed us. He played the straight big man role, right? It was just, I'm ducking in. Anthony Davis is playing the center. Are you going to switch up top? I have whoever guard on me. I'm going to duck in and get layups. I'm going to dominate you on the offensive rebounds. And like, obviously AD getting hurt was the, kind of end of that series. But like he was like really a big man, quote unquote, in that series against, all the way up to their finals run. I think even against Milwaukee in the finals, he showed like he can be physical, he can block shots. Like he was a force basically. And I think in his head, I'm not to psychoanalyze, but he's like, hey, I did this for a few years. I contributed to the team. I was a team player, and now like, I want a few post ups, every game.
Yeah.
Like not every shot has to come off a double drag where you shoot over two guys. I'm not attacking Devin Booker for that, but that was the Suns offense. A lot of double drag team where Chris Paul and Devin Booker, and they have the license to shoot on the first, second, and third option. And DeAndre Ayton's kind of in cleanup mode, and I'm sure that's not what he sees himself as. And that's where like it's so fascinating to me in a capped league and a league that's going to get quote unquote hard capped by the second apron. If your center is making $30 million and he's not a defensive force and he's not special enough on offense, I don't know where that fits. I think Ayton's a really good player. I just don't know where that fits on a team when he's already making the max for the rookie extension. So there's a lot on DeAndre Ayton. There's a lot of players that fit this mold to me, Vinay, where it's like, I don't know where you fit that on a really good on a team where you're trying to build something or you're trying to win. He's kind of in this like middle role where you want to be just middle of the pack, and I think that's the worst place to be in the NBA. And Ayton's contract to me kind of solidifies that.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's going to be very interesting. I do think he gets moved. It's going to be very interesting to see where he gets moved. I've heard behind the scenes a couple teams that I would not have expected to be interested in him. They are interested in him, and he will land, from what it sounds like, he might land on a team that's not a bad team, like not like a tanking team. So it'd be very curious, very interesting to see just kind of what happens to him. But I do anticipate that. So like, the Frank stealing our assistants, that's normal. It's expected. We hope that Frank does well, but we hope he loses every single game to the Lakers every time we play them. And the Suns have a way to go. But the big news of the weekend was the Brad trade. Like Bradley Beal, very suddenly Saturday morning, I want to say the Shams breaks that there's a serious conversation going on with, between the Suns and the Wizards and Miami. It's like a two horse race basically. And I think later in the day, they basically announced that Brad's going to be traded to, or it might've been the next day. They just announced that Brad's going to be traded to Phoenix. And some of the ancillary news from that is the person he's getting traded for is Chris Paul. And so what it looks like is they're going to be increasing Chris Paul's guarantee, which should come to no surprise to anybody because 2 weeks ago, we were told Chris Paul's either getting waived or they're gonna try and trade him if they can find a deal that makes more sense for him. Which is, there's an aside to that I want to discuss. But what were your initial thoughts when you heard about the Brad trade, or at least it's Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, a bunch of seconds, we don't know how many exactly, and pick swaps. What do you think
Yeah.
about? I think I'll just simple way for me to say it. Basketball talent wise, it is one of the most lopsided trades I've ever seen in
Yeah.
NBA history. But obviously, unique circumstance with Brad's no trade clause kind of pressuring them to pick where he wants to go. What were your initial thoughts of that trade?
Yeah, I mean, I thought, number one, I was like, the Wizards, I guess, Michael Winger was the guy who just came in and said, we're burning all this down. I don't
Yeah,
care how, I don't care when. We're doing this, we're doing this now. And yeah, you're right. That's one of the worst offers. I don't believe they got a first round pick at all. I think they got
no
like
first
maybe some,
rounders
yeah.
reportedly.
Yeah, and that's just all like that's just to me awful management, but obviously it's the previous management, so they obviously don't feel it.
Yeah,
I think this is getting galaxy brain too much to me. I mean, like I think Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant are absurd together. Like I
yes,
think we've gone a little. Like, I understand the concerns. I think there are real defensive concerns. It's already on. Can they beat the Nuggets? Well, like, yeah. I mean, who's beating the Nuggets right now? This is whole. They just won the damn
yeah,
title. They just were
yeah.
extremely dominant. I think putting the bar there and then calling the trade a failure because they don't have someone yet to
Defend
passively
Jokic.
guard
Yeah,
guard Jokic or guard Jamal Murray or whatever. Like I think that's kind of missing the point here. I think that's an absurd like threesome to deal with. Bradley Beal as the third option to me. Like if they stay healthy, I think we've gone too far in the where we just view players as contracts. Like and that's
yeah.
fair. I think that's the way the world works. That dude averaged 30 a game 2 seasons in a row.
That is incredibly difficult to do, to average 30 a game for an entire regular season. I
Yeah,
hope folks I was only gonna say I think like scoring has been devalued. Not to be ball don't
sure.
stop. I know that's his lane, but like not to like scoring does matter. You know what I mean? And I the defensive concerns are there, but I think people are. I agree. I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt, but the
No, no, no.
Galaxy bringing it for sure.
You're good. Yeah, I think we're thinking too hard on it. I mean, it's been compared to the Brooklyn Nets three. Those three as well were absurd on offense. They only played like 10 games. That was the
Yeah,
issue. But yeah, I think Bradley Beal. Like I think him as a jump shooter with two guys who collect the amount of attention that KD and Devin Booker do, where he's never gonna have to force it. He's never gonna have to run run screens where three guys run at him. And again, he was averaging 30 Vinay, where like he was the main guy. Like where
yeah,
like teams were super focused on him. And I think he was in an environment like we see this jump with regular players, right? We saw Aaron Gordon go to Denver. We saw Andrew Wiggins go to Golden State. To me, this gets accelerated with stars. To me, you throw a
hmm
star into an environment where winning's all that matters. Where every night they're going to be we'll see how villainous they are when the season starts. But I think for right now, they're the most hated team. I guess they don't really bring out that type of energy, but like I think they're the most villainous team so far. And so like we'll see how they deal with that. But I think Bradley Beal in an extremely winning type of environment, a place where he's gonna have to care defensively. I don't think he was defending in Washington very much.
yeah,
And I don't know how much I can blame him. That team wasn't really going anywhere, but yeah, I think they're gonna be absurd. The package is just the no trade clause. We may never see another one. Like we may never see
yeah,
another no trade clause. And people are framing this as Bradley Beal controlling the situation, which he is. But I mean, it's his agent, right?
yeah,
You basically have Vinay, you basically have the agent in the war room, right? Like he's basically in there, like deciding it, which um, probably goes against everything you're doing as an organization. It probably just destroys any leverage you have with
yeah,
any conversation if the agent is in there getting to police the deals. And I'm sure Washington just wanted to get out of that. And I'm interested to see what they do. I don't think Chris Paul will even step foot in Washington until maybe they play a road game there. I don't see him going there.
yeah. I
And
agree.
we'll see what Porzingis and Kyle Kuzma do. But no, I think they're going to be really good, man. Are they favorites? No, but I'm high on them as like a regular season team. They stay healthy. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think they're probably going to have one of the best offenses in the league, just off of the pure
Yeah,
standpoint of what that trio can do. Like, there are definitely going to be nights where one of them has a bad shooting night and they still win by like 25 because the other two go off for like 30 each. But yeah, offensively they'll be fine. I still want to see what happens defensively. Like, you
yep,
can't just grab any random guys off the street. You know what I mean? To try and fix that
sure.
team. They're definitely gonna have to find some defense. Can they stay healthy? That's always been the thing for most of these teams. But look, dude, like if you're trading a 39-year-old Chris Paul for Bradley Beal, like I don't know, I think Brad's like 20 something, like still,
29. Yeah.
yeah, 29. He's not even 30 yet. Like that's a pretty good trade. Like if the Lakers had somehow, like just think of it this way, like if Brad had used his non-trade, whatever his no trade clause and forced his way to the Lakers, like we would be calling the Lakers like a favorite, like a
Sure.
a 1 to 2, a top 3 favorite. You know what I mean? And I get it. Like Phoenix, they don't have AD. AD is a phenomenal defensive player, and Braun is a phenomenal player just in general. Like they don't have the same talent, but this team was also really good last year. And they
Yep.
were a team that was giving a lot of team. Booker went absolutely crazy in the second round. They took
Yep.
2 games off of Denver. The Lakers couldn't even take one. So like it
Yeah.
should tell you how much their offense mattered. And like I said, Frank is a championship head coach. He can construct a championship defense out of spare parts because that's what he did with the Lakers. He took Rajon Rondo, who was out the league, Avery
Yep.
Bradley, who was out the league, Dwight Howard, who was out the league, JaVale out the league. Like he took a ton of guys that were either end of the bench guys, and he constructed a good enough. And obviously, Anthony Davis, Braun did a lot of heavy lifting too, but he knows how to do it. So I can see the vision that their owner has, Matt Ishbia. He has about it. So I'll be very curious to see what happens. That Ayton deal is going to be a big deal. I wouldn't be surprised if they have a lot of vets that are trying to get over there.
Right. Yeah.
Phoenix is turning into like this LA adjacent kind of location to me. Like they're like, oh, I can't go to LA because they're already capped out. So let me just go to Phoenix. It's still kind of warm there. It's like a 45-minute flight. That was apparently one of the motivations. The Brad's family's in LA, like Chris Paul's family's in LA, and it's a much easier flight
It's a
to
close situation.
yeah.
It's just interesting to me to watch. Like teams go through this decision all the time, and Phoenix was on this, this road of like, hey, we're building something nice, and we got Devin Booker, we got Mikal Bridges, who we drafted, Devin Booker we drafted, Cam Johnson we drafted, and we had this like really nice team
Yeah.
that's on this like linear, trajectory where you lose and like you don't make the playoffs, but you win this like 8 games in a row, and you have this really cute season, and then you get to the finals, and then you lose in the finals, and then you lose in like the second round, and they're like, no, let's tear this all apart. We're going to get Kevin Durant, and we're firing that coach. I just think it's fascinating how quickly like the league moves, right, and how expectations just further you into these decisions where. Like I think you do this move, but you look at their like Devin Booker's their young core, by the way. Like and Brad's only 29, so you can fit him wherever. But they're in this place now where like now you have to win. There's no longer this Mikal Bridges. If he just develops his handle like one more summer, then see what happens. Do you remember like those are the conversations?
There's,
and those were really
there's no
like,
more what's it called? Yeah, now you have to be good now. Like there's no
right.
That's why when every time somebody says, oh no, 4 years down the line, like I see the arguments both ways. Like especially as a Laker fan, like people are like, oh no, trade. There's half the groups like trade the pick. The other half is like, no, just like chill out for a second. Like stop trading all the first rounders just for guys that may not make that much of a difference. But like, that's a perfect decision. They go to the finals, and now everybody's looking at him as like, whoa, this team might be here for a while. Michael Bridges,
Right.
Cam Johnson,
You throw
everything.
their
DeAndre Ayton.
ages out, right? Like you
Yeah,
throw like
exactly.
28,
They're like,
26.
oh, they were just rookies in the finals. So they
Mhm.
like the young OKC, they can make it back. Obviously, different talent levels. But it's
Sure.
just like 1 year later, they get embarrassed at home by Luka Doncic, and they're like, nah. And then the owner sells. He goes through a scandal himself. He
Yes,
sells
yes.
his team. The new owner comes in and says, "F this. I'm not wasting my time with this." And then actually, you see the opposite. Like it's not a new owner, but you see the opposite happen with Washington. Washington gets rid of a longtime GM who's been there for a really long time. I think Tommy Shepard had been there for quite a while. They get a new GM, and it's just we're not wasting time with this. We're burning this down now. We're not going to. Doesn't matter what we look like. We can look dumb, but we know that this is not a 1 year plan. This is a 3, 4, 5 year plan that we have going into place. So it's just, it's such a strange place, like for in the NBA now. It's just like
it's just like new owner syndrome too, right? Like I've heard this a lot. Like you saw this with Minnesota as well, right? They just went and traded 5 first-round picks for Rudy Gobert,
Yeah,
and just juxtapose that to what Bradley Beal just went for. I understand the no
Crazy.
trade clause. I understand all of that. DeJounte Murray goes for 3 first-round picks. I wonder, Vinay, so the NBA is in a interesting place because obviously you do this deal and I see Suns fans excited and all that, right? But there's a part of me, and I'm not saying you don't do those deals, and this is a conversation that there's a lot of context that you can put to this, but it feels like transactional, right? The relationship
Yeah.
between Beal and Phoenix, and even KD and Phoenix, like they feel like hired guns, right? And like Phoenix was this feel good story, and the Suns kind of finally they broke through this, years of like. Remember, they went through like years of just being terrible. Devin
Yeah.
Booker was on shitty teams for a very, very long time, and the way they got out of that was not skipping steps, right? Which is the hilarious
Yeah.
part about this. They're like, all right, we're just gonna we're not doing this anymore. We're not paying. I forgot the guard that they went and signed. They paid a bunch of money to, who was I forgot his name, but anyway,
I remember they had like Eric Bledsoe
Eric
on that
Bledsoe. Yes, yes,
team.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
They went like overplayed Eric Bledsoe and all that stuff, and they're like, no, we're gonna be bad, but we're gonna draft really well, and they
Yeah.
did. They went and drafted Mikal Bridges. They drafted Cam Johnson. Monty Williams created a culture that
Yeah.
that festered winning and that festered a winning environment, and then you're like, nah, that was cool, but thanks for getting us over that hump. We're gonna sell our chips, and we're going all in. I don't really gamble, but like just going all in on your chips.
Yeah.
Like, hey, like I was at the casino for 30 hours building this, and you just went all in like 5 minutes. You know what I mean? So I think it's a really interesting place that the league's in, where like the Beal and Katie feel it's a very transactional relationship with Phoenix, where Devin Booker is the only one that feels like he really like he accepts Phoenix as like, hey, this is like my place. This is
Yeah.
something I want to win for. LeBron has done that with the Lakers, right? He's really embraced like LA's mine. I think he's been in LA now for more than he was in his first Cleveland stint, which is extremely crazy to say. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that's just really interesting. I know Suns fans are happy they got Bradley Beal. It's interesting to like compare them where they were a season ago, where they had all these pieces that were building and guys that were growing together, and it's just all torn apart now. So
Yeah, it's just interesting. We keep seeing this, and now like the feel good story this year was like the Sacramento Kings, right? Like the Kings, they
Yep.
finally break their playoff drought, but now they've got real expectations. Like people are gonna be like, okay, well, you got to go back. You can't just lose, and not make the playoffs again. I would imagine like their owners probably like their fans are probably like, yeah, we're not trying to go from the number one team in the Pacific Division to the bad fighting for our lives just to get into the playoffs. It's fascinating. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say you mentioned the Kings, and I don't want to tweet this because it's mean, but I was just something I was laughing about, like, so like no, because this is just mean, and it's not even trying to be mean, but like the Kings had their best season in 20 years, right? Like just think about that, like 20.
I know
No,
what you're
like
gonna
I'm
say.
being
Go
I'm
ahead.
being
Yeah.
dead serious. They had their best season in 20 years, and it was amazing. They were incredible. They were fun all year.
Yeah.
Rock his house,
Great story.
Light the beam is an incredible story. We went 2 rounds later than them, like. I don't like to me that just shows how hard the
It
league
is.
is. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Their best season in 20 years, Renee.
Yeah.
Like, and they went out to a team that, we made pretty light work of it. Like, I was thinking about this today because people bring up the Clippers one, right? They're like, oh, the Clippers have been to one conference finals in like 20 years, and Lakers went in their worst season or whatever. And like,
Yeah.
that's funny. But I think about like, imagine from a Kings fan's perspective. It's like,
Right.
damn, we had our best season in 20 years. Like everything went right. Like De'Aaron Fox was a superstar. Sabonis was like as good as hell as you could
Amazing.
be.
Yeah.
Lakers went 2 rounds like after. That's insane to wrap my head around. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like I was thinking about today. I'm like, that's crazy. Because like if you go listen to the media, they're like, yeah, the Kings had an amazing series. They need to run everything back. Bring back everyone, give everyone back. And they're like, should the Lakers pay Rui Hachimura $100 million? I'm like,
we just went farther than you guys.
That's I just like those are the type of like stuff that just makes me laugh. I'm like, man,
Yeah.
it's so fascinating.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see just kind of the coverage itself is always super funny.
Right.
Just how media people talk about the team, like like Bobby Marks has been talking about, like, oh, the Lakers can gain access to the non-taxpayer MLE. I was just like, how are they going to do that?
No,
Like
they can't. Yeah, it was
they
very
have to let
weird.
everybody go to do that. And he's just like, yeah, they have to let Reeves walk and D'Lo walk. I was like, why would we do that? Why are we letting people go that were actually good for us? Well, what is this logic? But media will do what it does.
Doesn't that Kings thing trip you out though? Like, it's
Yeah.
been 20
I mean,
years.
it doesn't trip me out, but it's just
it
like
trips me out, man. Like, it's been 20 years since they've touched the playoffs, and we went 2 rounds later than them in a year where we started 2-10. We're the 13th seed. Like, I don't know. That just tripped me out today. I was like, man,
I wanted to play them so bad, dude. I was hoping they beat the Warriors just because I wanted to play them so bad. Just I had so many jokes. I hope we do eventually run into them into the playoffs, and I hope we do beat them, obviously. But like, because they have some demons, they probably have worse demons than the Nuggets to exercise when it comes to the Lakers. But nothing would bring me more joy than playing them in the playoffs and knocking them out. I honestly thought we were going to get a second round matchup with them, and seeing Sabonis get manhandled the way he did in the first round, I was just like, oh my god, like Anthony Davis is gonna have like the series of his life against this dude. But like, we'll see. It's a cool story. I think the new CBA is going to make a big deal. It's affecting the Lakers already. It's affecting all the teams around the league. Teams are going to. I think we might see more moves before the draft as a result of it. We're recording this on Monday night. The draft is on Thursday, I think, right? It's on Thursday. So it's like we may get a flurry of moves on draft day or beforehand. So I'd be very, the Brad trade has already happened. And there's some things when we play our game of flip this contract, I'll explain what the difference is that teams might be trying to capitalize on now. But, we've got Frank. We talked about LeBron and Mike Malone's beef. We talked about the Brad trade. It's still to be determined when it comes to that. But there was an aside. There was a thing that came out today that I wanted to bring up, and
your favorite guy.
It was about Chris Paul. And so Chris Paul he's promoting his book, which is cool. I think it's called 61. If you're into Chris Paul, go get the book. It's free advertising for Chris. But he was on Good Morning America, and I watched the interview that got shared on social media, and he was explaining like how he was like on a plane, and his son or something like that told him that he had been traded. And then I think he did an interview with somebody else where he basically said that it was the owner Ishbia and Isaiah Thomas, who has a consultant role with the Suns, like on a front office executive sort of way. Isaiah was supposed to originally be part of that front office, but there was a lot of pushback about his role because of what happened with him in New York and whatnot. So it sounds like he's doing sort of like this silent partner role for them. But Chris Paul it seemed as though he presented it like he was unsure, like he was like taken aback that he had been traded. Like he was like, it's shocked that he had been traded. And like what I feel for him. These guys are human. You and I both talked about you can never ignore the human element of basketball. Like you still have to respect these, like assume these people are normal human beings and that they go through the same emotions. But the part that was cracking me up was like, why are you surprised? Like a part of me was like, you just like leaked to Chris Haynes 2 weeks ago that you were going to get waived. So why are you like in shock? And they asked him about his reaction to the trade, so I understand why he answered it. But it's just so weird. Like the framing of it was like, oh, I couldn't believe they traded me away. I was just like, that's actually better for you because they have to increase his guarantee to be able to bring Bradley Beal back because of how the trade rules work in the CBA. So it's like, I think he'd be happy, but that was like, it was so random. And it just kind of made me think, like a guy like him probably wants to be known as like a top 5 player at his position when it's all said and done. There's probably a little bit of like narrative controlling kind of with him. Like, so he doesn't want to make it look like, oh, I'm just being cast off, like to the Wizards.
Oh, for sure.
And what it is. And he probably wants to make it seem like, oh, I wanted to make things work and they're trading me for Brad and blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. And so I just thought it was interesting. But from what I've heard, back to the basketball part, from what I've heard, Lakers are not pursuing him. They were trying to find a third team for Chris as opposed to going straight to the Wizards. So then that way, I know why he's doing it. Chris wants that so that he can keep that contract still there because it's easier for him to tell the new owner or the new team that gets him, bro, just guarantee some more of this contract for the following year. You know what I mean? If I have a good season this year, as opposed to him going to Washington and then getting waived and stretched, which is probably what's going to happen to him.
Yeah.
So I've heard that the Lakers are not going to pursue him via trade, like to be that third team.
Right.
They're going to do it. They're just going to wait for him to get bought out.
Yeah.
More and more seems like that's probably going to be the case. He's going to get bought out. I don't see any teams running to go and add him and add the 25 million or whatever he's going to be getting paid. Are
Mm-hmm.
you, since the last time we talked about it, are you
Yeah.
more on board with the idea of Chris Paul being a Laker and probably being our starting point guard?
Do you remember when the first time Chris Paul got cast away from a team? So it was Houston, I believe,
Yeah.
right? Who traded him for Russell Westbrook to a OKC team that was not meant to do anything, right? They had,
Right.
I believe Shea was on that team.
Shea
Yes,
was on that
because
team.
Paul George was
Dennis
traded.
Schroeder was on that team. Lou Dort was on that team. Yeah.
Right, a lot of guys that are now have made names for themselves, but I think Chris Paul is a prideful guy. I don't think he's, I'm not sure he's going to take kindly to just being swept away, which this kind of is. I mean, they're kind of telling him, we went through last time, or was that offline, where like Jaren Jackson Jr. was calling LeBron old. Suns are calling Chris Paul old, right? You're old, can't stay healthy. And again, Chris Paul, part of festering that winning environment, in my opinion, in Phoenix. Like, he's a big part of, to me, him going to Phoenix in 2022 or whenever that was. I think he was a big part of what Phoenix is now. So I'm sure he feels the type of way. But yeah, like I don't think Chris Paul wants to go quietly into the light, right? Or into the dark, or however how that saying goes. I don't think he wants to go quietly away. And I think he's going to still try to win. I just can't see a team like pouring up the contracts it would take to fill up the $25 million that he's going to be paid. Like, I just can't see it. And Washington, to me, from their actions, tell me, like, I've seen maybe they'll try to get something for Chris Paul. That ship has sailed. Like, that ship has left, to me, has left the dock. You got nothing for Bradley Beal to turn around and try to get value for Chris Paul. I just can't see it. I can't see anyone giving actual assets. I've seen the Clippers being floated to where they might have Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook. A lot of weird, news going around now. But
do you remember how that series ended when he was with the Suns and they knocked the Clippers out? You remember that thing that Patrick Beverley pushed Chris Paul in the back, like at the end of that playoff series? It's like all those same guys are still there. Like Marcus Morris, he's been rumored to getting moved, but like Kawhi's on that team, PG's on that team, Marcus Morris is still on that team, Zubac is on that team. Like, I don't think those guys are like, oh yeah, like, come on back. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, strange.
To your point about starting, I think that's so interesting because I think Chris Paul is an interesting place where, like, he's said this out loud, where he wants to be close to home, right? Like, he wants to be near his kids. So that really takes out a lot of teams. Like, that really eliminates a whole, you see Milwaukee floated, you see Boston floated, but I think those places are just too far. I've seen Memphis floated. Again, I think that's just too far. I was like, kind of cuts you into this like California, and I can't see the Warriors going and get Chris Paul. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. So it's really the Lakers and Clippers, and I think he's going to get waived. It's just I don't see this any other way. And yeah, like, I mean, I'm on a minimum. I don't think he needs to start. At least I hope not. I know you're guaranteeing that. I just like that's a really rough place to me, starting 38, 39-year-olds. I think that's a really rough place for your team to be. But I compare that to, like, you have Chris Paul on the minimum. I think that's still great value in terms of a contract. So, but I don't know. Like, does Chris Paul want to play for the minimum? Like, I don't think he sees himself as that yet. I'm fascinated where his like career kind of goes with this. And it's not a good look, honestly, for like, he's not the head of the Players Association anymore, but it's really not a good look for that guy to like take less, or like all those kind of narratives and stuff like that. And again, I think Chris Paul is a prideful dude who's going to want to show next year that I'm not done. And we'll see if he can do that. But I'm still fine with him coming on the minimum if it doesn't mess up any of our other plans. Like, I think Bobby mentioned, like, hey, we can give him the non-taxpayer. I think you were talking about that. That's not happening. Like,
that's not happening. We're not giving him.
He's not getting that. But the contract thing, you think someone would give up contracts? Like, I just cannot see. The Marcus Morris thing was floated today, and the hit piece on Marcus Morris came out. But I mean, the Clippers could get to that salary. You want to give up Marcus Morris and one. I guess Ty Lue doesn't play Robert Covington, so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. But you want to give up Robert Covington and Marcus Morris for Chris Paul? I mean, you could do that. I I don't see how that's very beneficial. So what do you think? What are you seeing with him?
Yeah, I don't see a team kind of going like the logic is always the logic is always the market is always playing against you, right? So like if you were
Hmm.
going to trade for Chris Paul, the reason you would trade for Chris Paul as opposed to just taking him on a buyout is because you want his bird rights going into the following season. And I don't see a team out there that wants his bird rights like that going into the following season. And essentially the market, in my opinion, is against Chris Paul. Everybody on the market that wants Chris Paul, the same way everybody on the market was against Russ, was like, hey, if I can get you for less than $2 million, I'd rather do that and not trade for you, even if I know you're an impactful player, for my team for this season coming up and beyond. So it's like the market always dictates it, and the market's always pretty right about that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
it's like I think a lot of teams that want to add him were probably looking at him like, I don't have to really give up any assets for you. So I'm just going to wait for you to get bought out. And if I do have to, if it's like a team like the Chicago Bulls, like if they go and say, okay, we're okay with giving him $12 million of the NTMLE, like the non-taxpayer mid level, then they'd rather do that, as opposed
Mm,
to trading assets and
right.
then just to keep his bird rights. They probably don't care about that. So I don't see it, but who knows? There might be some maybe Boston is a team out there that really is like, you know what, we're a point guard away or something like that, and wants to do it. But I just don't see it.
Yeah, I just can't see someone trading for that, and I don't think Washington's gonna get anything for him. Which I think this is
Yeah.
just all a game. I mean, they talked about extending the Beal trade to reroute Chris Paul somewhere. I just can't see it happening. I think Chris Paul is gonna choose his next destination. Interesting part to me, Vinay, was they said that the Clippers. I think it was reported by I think Law Murray was the one who reported that it's less likely that the Clippers get him if he's waived. Which I guess that I'm not sure like how that works, but they said like it's less likely if Chris Paul's waived that he would go to the Clippers. So I thought that was an interesting kind of
I think
nugget.
because I think it's because of the mechanism, right? Like if he has to choose between going back to, because if he gets waived, then he just chooses where he wants to go,
You're right.
and so if he's going to choose, I'm assuming that Law is basically saying he's going to choose the Lakers over the Clippers. He's not going to come back to the Clippers, um,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's just I wouldn't like his best friend is on the Lakers, and I'm pretty sure LeBron will like
Oh,
take a
that
look
text is
at.
sent
Yeah,
a
he'll
long
probably
time ago.
nudge Rob Palinka, be like, yeah, if you sign him, you got to start him. Like you can't, like he probably has a little bit
Ooh.
more of the locker room on his side. And look, I know the GM is not supposed to be a real thing, but he does have say. Braun has that equity to be able to say, hey, maybe we should start him instead and do this sort of thing. But obviously, like you said, like it can complicate the situation with D'Lo's contract extension and what that looks like too as well. So
Yeah.
be very curious to see what happens there.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping you're not just giving Chris Paul this starting point guard spot. Like
Yeah,
I think that's really strange. I don't think D'Lo's coming back to be the backup guard either, so that makes it really complicated.
his
Uh,
his extension talk's been real quiet. Like all the news that's been coming out, it's been Austin coming back, Rui,
mhm.
they're gonna match his contract. I think Eric Pincus, he wrote today for Bleacher Report, like he wrote that the contract range for like Rui yearly average salary is somewhere between like 13 million and 18 million. And I remember when you and I were doing our kind of season recap, I was just like, dude, his number is somewhere between 15 and 18. Like that's the
Right.
only number I can really kind of, because he has to have like a comparable salary on the market to be able to say, look, this guy got this. This is what I want because I'm as good as this guy, if not better than this
Mhm.
guy. So this is the range that I want. And then the Lakers will probably be like, yeah, that's fine. I think 18 million is reasonable for all the. If you guys don't know why, we made both Raj and I made a really big case as to why, even if Rui is asking for $20 million, it's worth that amount. And there's, we listed out a bunch of different reasons why you want it. Rui's good to keep at that number. But like D'Lo, you've heard nothing. Like I haven't heard anything about them having any headway. Like it sounds like it's very much in the dark, and I don't know if that bodes well, if that's not a good thing. It's
It's
curious.
it's very strange. Yeah, it's very hard to put a number on him, right? And I think I've made my case to you as well and others that like the cost for a starting guard, like that's expensive.
Yeah,
Whatever you think about his playoffs, his playoff failures and his percentages in the playoffs and how he's not physical, whatever. Those guards like to like as starting, point guard or two
Yeah.
guards in the league. Those are expensive. Those are $15 million a year players. So I'm interested to see how those extension talks go. And I'm not really sure. To me, I think you try to bring everyone back as much as you can. I don't think you should let D'Lo walk for nothing. I think that'd be a mistake. He's one of the big parts of why you made that trade in the first place. So yeah, I don't think you're going to hear anything for a while, though. Renee. I don't think there's like a rush on that. I'm not sure what the actual end date,
Yeah.
But it's clear though that Rui and Austin are the priority, and I think that's clear. I think those dudes will be back. Here's my feeling on the offseason, Renee. Sign, extend Rui, extend Austin, pick someone at 17 or whatever, and then
Yes.
the rest of it, I'll live with that. I'll live whatever decisions you make. But those two for sure will be back. The D'Lo stuff. Do you think they would let him? Like, I don't think they would let him walk, right? I can't. I know you feel
Bro,
you have a little bit
if
more
they sign
energy
Chris
to it.
Paul, if it comes out that Chris Paul is coming to the Lakers, I don't think they'll let D'Lo walk, but I think they're going to do
So
that
you think
thing.
that's leverage in D'Angelo Russell extension?
Yes, 100%.
See, I can't. Chris Paul has proven that he cannot stay healthy throughout a run. I think he has proven that he's going to be. Now, whether he accepts this or not, I'm not sure, but he's proven that you have to kind of load manage him throughout a season.
Yes.
And like to me, that shouldn't change what you like. You should be. I guess my point is you should be adding on to what we just ran through, right? Like I want additions to what we were going through, and like if you can move D'Lo or if you can find better options. To me, Chris Paul is not the like D'Lo replacement. Is he that for you? Like, is Chris Paul a D'Lo replacement for you?
He's not a D'Lo replacement.
Okay.
But he is, again,
Oof.
we have to remember the backdrop to this conversation is LeBron has openly said yet again at the end of the season that he wants somebody else to be the guy that handles the ball because he doesn't want to do it. And
he got that. He
but he's saying that on the heels. He's saying that on the heels of how D'Lo played against the Nuggets. So I get it. My thing is, I don't know if that statement is in support of D'Lo or if that statement is in spite of D'Lo. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if he's saying in between. Like, okay, let's not project on LeBron, okay? Because if I do that,
Sure.
people get very upset when I read his lips the other way. What is the sentiment of most of the fan base about D'Lo? After watching him in the playoffs, what is the sentiment about? Do you think is the casual sentiment? Let me not even put it that way.
Okay.
The hardcore sentiment says you have to keep him. Salary cap sentiment says you have to keep him. You can't just let him walk for nothing. You traded, granted there are other guys in the trade. You still traded a pick to get him, so you can't asset wise let him walk. But what is the casual observer's sentiment about if D'Lo comes to you and says, "I want $30 million a year for 2 years"? Serious question.
No, 100%. I agree with you.
That the alternative is Chris Paul wants to come after a buyout, come to LA. What is the casual fan going to say?
I'd probably tell you like get out the door, like you know what I mean, like.
Right.
But see, this is where I think a conversation can be had because it's the same thing. We just had this conversation with DeAndre Ayton, right?
Yeah.
DeAndre Ayton's already at $30 million a year. $30 million a year is DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah.
You're not winning with DeAndre Ayton as your $30 million player, right? I'm not comparing D'Lo to Ayton, but I see a lot of like similarities in how they're talked about, right? Like a lot of is he engaged? Is he up for the physical matchup? Does he want to take it to the other team? Like all these type of like things that are very hard to assess in just the stats. Ayton and D'Lo are spoken about same kind of conversations. Ton of skill in both of them. Both of them want to be jump shooters. D'Lo, I think, makes more sense. DeAndre Ayton wants to be a mid-range pull-up jump shooter when he should be, he wants to jab step mid-range from the jump shot. D'Lo wants to just take his threes, which makes him an extremely annoying streaky player when you know that he has a lot more talent to it.
Yeah.
And to me, this is where I don't think D'Angelo Russell's getting like a $30 million a year contract. Where is he getting that? Like you know what I mean? Assess the league. Like what? Again, not to go to the Ayton thing, but like he's not good enough to be your one, right? Like he's already what, 26, 27. So he's
Yeah.
not going to be your, like, you're not giving him the keys to your car,
Right.
right? He's going to drive it when the other guy is when the other guy already, like, controlled the offense. Like you're not giving him the keys. So guy, you're not giving the keys, you're giving $30 million. That doesn't make sense to me. Those numbers don't add up. I think that the two can find a reasonable number that
Sure.
makes sense, in my opinion. Now, if
Yeah.
D'Lo's like 30 million or I walk, that's a very tough conversation that I just don't think it gets to. I think it works. I think for both sides, it makes sense to come to a reasonable number. I think D'Lo wants a long-term kind of deal. I think the Lakers want to kind
Sure.
of keep it around that 2 years. I think there's a middle ground there that's not my job to figure out. So I'm gonna let like Rob Flink and them figure it out. But yeah, it's a tough thing when, like, you already have your guard who you want to give the keys to in Austin Reeves. You have LeBron James still there, and D'Angelo Russell is your, like, fourth or fifth starter. Now, how
Yeah.
much does that guy cost? I don't know, but he's not a $30 million player.
I agree.
But he's also not your MLE, like he's not that either. He's in that kind of range, and I don't know where the answer is there. And D'Lo, again, is a super polarizing player. And I still try to bring up, like, Vinay, there's moments like he has the Memphis series moments, the
Yes.
playing game moment, game 6 where he starts hot against the Warriors, game 1 with the game winning basket. There's like moments in there. It's sad that the Denver series went as it was, but some players, there's just a line that there's a threshold that they can't get to. And I'm not sure if that's true or not, but that's what we just watched. And I don't know
Yeah.
where to put the money on that. I just, like, to me, letting D'Lo go so you start the 39-year-old point guard who also just can't survive after round 1. That, to me, that math is wrong. That's the wrong way to go about this summer to me. So I don't know.
I mean, yeah, okay. I won't argue against it because we're gonna do this forever. Because I can make the argument that we've done worse
Okay.
with our decision making in for the sake of politics, because there were some back end politics that were involved with some of the decision making. But I 100% agree with you. Like, if we can get him at somewhere closer to 20 million a year, that gives us some
Mm-hmm.
financial flexibility to do other stuff. Use the MLE without crossing the second apron and stuff like that. That's super helpful. If it's somewhere between 20 and 25, I think both you and I have said that's okay. Like, that's a reasonable amount for a guy with his talent, his age. Probably a little bit more of an 82 game player than a 16 game player. But that's fine because Rui is kind of an 82 game player right now until we see more out of him. Obviously his first stint in the playoffs was good. So we're not against it. It's just once it gets past 25 and we start going into 30, 35, because he wanted to, like, he probably thought he was
Oh,
going to
yeah.
get 35 a year. From what I had heard behind the scenes, like, he thought he was going to get 35 a year when he first came to the Lakers. That's why he was kind of playing up the Laker fans and, really trying to butter up the crowd. But, Laker fans are smart. They watch you play and they'll be like, I don't think you're worth 35 million. So, we'll see what happens with that number. But I just thought it was interesting that we haven't really heard much about his extension talks, considering, he's going to be a big dollar kind of guy for the Lakers if we bring
Yeah.
him back.
It's
Um,
it's like, to me, I go back, it's like this theory versus, like, reality, right? That I,
Yeah.
like, in my head, like, a D'Lo Austin, like, that's like the exact skill sets I want in, like, a
Right.
backcourt next to LeBron, right? The issue was, like, in reality, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. Like,
Right.
when the games mattered. So I think that's a really tough situation. And D'Lo's agent's job is to go in there and be like, before us, you were the 13th seed.
Yeah.
We made the conference finals. Like, that's a tax that you're gonna have to pay. And it's Pelinka's job to be like, well, I mean, we have another guard that we kind of have to pay. So, like, it's a tough situation to be in. But again,
Yeah.
I hope it works out. Again, it's like the Phoenix thing that we just talked about, where, like, the Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson just got sold off. And I'm
Yeah.
not comparing D'Lo to them, but, like, I would like it to work. I'm not sure if it will.
For
I
sure.
would, if it was my choice, that's the preferred way that I would like it to work. But I understand the business. But cutting him, Vinay, for Chris Paul would just, that'd be just nasty business, man. That's to me, that's wrong. That's not the correct way to go about this summer. To me,
Yeah.
that'd be a mistake.
It would be interesting to see what would happen with that sort of situation. But they've also floated, like, signing Chris Paul on a buyout and still also
Yeah.
retaining D'Lo, and maybe playing them together, like D'Lo playing more of an off-ball two-guard role. I don't know what happens to our defense, our backcourt defense, if we go with that combination. But it is what it is. So that's perfect. And we've touched on a lot of things. The Mike Malone thing, the Suns news, Vogel stealing our coaches, this Chris Paul thing, possibly coming to the Lakers, looking more likely he may come to the Lakers. Everybody's saying that now. And then, just whatnot. But this D'Lo extension conversation is a great segue to a game that I wanted to introduce for the folks that are regular listeners. You guys listen in. It's a game I like to play with Raj. I've played a couple times before, but I didn't have a good name for it. I'm gonna call it, and so the name I came up for it is called Flip My Contract. And this is in the same vein as, well, not the same vein, but the idea is kind of similar to like those house flipping shows where they kind of buy a house, they fix it up, and then they sell it for a higher bid. So we're not fixing anybody up. We're just flipping contracts. But contracts have different value. And what I wanted to do for today's game of Flip My Contract was talk about Malik Beasley. Malik Beasley has an unguaranteed or a team option for about $16.5 million. And we have another guy, Shaq Harrison, who we signed at the end of the season. I gave him a rest of season contract. And he's at about $2.4 million, right? It's a minimum contract. So combined, those guys are pretty close to about $20 million. For this game, we're going to consider their contracts together since they're non-guaranteed. They're both expiring contracts too as well. Now, when you combine their two salaries together with the CBA rules that we currently have, these are the ones before the CBA rules get changed on July 1st. The Lakers can send out those guys and bring back about $23.7 million in salary. Okay.
Sure.
So it'd be $23.7 million coming in, and we send out like 20. So you're talking about a cap hit savings of about, let's say, $4 to $5 million, depending on what the trade ends up being. So the Lakers have the opportunity to send out two expiring contracts that can save an opposing team $4 million this year, as well as whatever the long-term salary is that they want to shed. Now, the Lakers are armed with obviously the 17th pick, and then we also have a second-round pick, which I don't think really has that much. We have future picks, but for the sake of this exercise, we're just going to focus on the 17th and the 47th. So what we're going to do for this game, for the folks that are following along in the space and the folks that are eventually watch this video, I'm going to give Raj a couple of trade ideas, and I want to know what his thought is. If you want to get into detail about it, you can, or if you just want to say yes or no, you can also do that too as well. I am sure the content creators are going to be taking down some of these ideas so they can discuss them later. So I wanted to save them up until this segment came up so we could discuss them, because I wanted to see what your thought was. So I'm going to give you like 4 or 5 different trade ideas. And the goal here, the value that we're bringing, you and I are both working in the Lakers front office. We know Malik Beasley can shoot. He didn't have he started off well for the Lakers. He was streaking.
He's supposed to be able to shoot. Yes.
He's supposed to be able to shoot. And the lights were too bright for him. He was very quickly out of the playoffs, but both you and I have both said that this guy is definitely an 82-game player. He is very capable of coming in, playing that
There's value in that
role. Yeah, Luke Kennard role, the Duncan Robinson role, whatever relocation shooter, DHO shooter that you can think of, Malik can be that guy and spell your guards some minutes. So there's value in that. And he's an expiring contract at a really decent amount. It's not bad at all. You get his bird rights, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. And he's not an a-hole, right? Like he's not a guy who comes into your locker room and just starts, some locker rooms, he just come in and start causing issues off the court. So, Malik's a good guy. So that's our pitch. Obviously the expiring contract is the biggest deal. CBA is coming up. Teams want to get underneath that second apron. They want to avoid the tax penalties. So we've got an expiring contract here for you. So the first thing that you and I are talking to right now, and they've come up to us and they've said, okay, we've got a deal for you for Malik's contract. We want to know if you're willing to do this. The Charlotte Hornets come to us and they say, we'll offer you Terry Rozier.
Good friend Mitch Kupchak.
Yes. For Malik Beasley and Shaq Harrison. And you give us the 17th pick, and we'll give you the 27th pick.
Ooh, okay.
So Malik, we won't even discuss Shaq because he's just a throw-in. Malik and the 17 for Terry Rozier and the 27. I'll give you the contract so you know what it is. Terry is getting paid $23 million a year. He has 2 more years, but his last year is Oh, it's basically guaranteed. So he has 2 more years at about 24 and 26 million. So do you take that trade? Would you flip it for that?
The first thing I'll say with that is that means D'Angelo Russell is gone. Like that's what that, right? I mean, like
I mean,
you're not
it would give them leverage. It's
yes,
Terry
that's what you want to
is
call that. Yeah,
yeah.
that's that's I'll see you another lifetime. No, like I would think really hard about that. I like Terry Rozier a lot. I think my only issue is he's like 6'1",
Yes,
and
he's
so
not a big guard. Correct.
right. And I think he's a really talented guard. I to me, I think I'd rather keep 17 for that. I just think like what Terry Rozier would bring. Um, look, he's super good. He's a really great. I think he's one of the best off the bounce 3-point shooters in the league. Again, just 6'1" to me when I think we need like defense and wings and size, in my opinion. And like I'd rather keep 17. But what about you? I think I would think really hard about that though. That's a tough one. But again, that's a goodbye to D'Lo. Number one, because D'Lo's not coming in to back up Terry Rozier. I'm,
Right.
I'm sure of that.
Well, so there is the case that Terry could come off the bench for the Lakers. Like it's not uncommon that he's done that before. Like he is like if you're going to
Sure,
start D'Lo and do that. The
that's a
other
good
thing
point.
is if D'Lo gets too expensive, or if I think D'Lo is going to get too expensive, and I
Yeah.
know Chris Paul is waiting in the wings for me, and I'm going to go with Chris Paul and Austin Reeves, then Terry off the bench, I still keep a first round pick.
Yeah, that's really tough for me. I think Terry Rozier is really good. I have worry about the size at 6'1".
Sure.
And yeah, I'm just not sure that's where we're deficient. Like to me,
Sure.
but
This
like
would
off the
also mean
bench,
this would also mean the end of Dennis Schroeder too, by the way. So
yes,
there's
yeah.
another bonus to that.
I'm sure you're really bummed about that.
Bro, we have okay, come on. We can't have any player that's guaranteed 30 minutes no matter how good or bad he plays. Like it's just not going to work. And but that's mine. I won't.
No,
He's a free agent.
look,
Let me
that
let him build up his own value.
for sure. And Terry Rozier would be super dynamic. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a off the pick and roll guard that can score, can pull up from three. I think he'd like be able to take over on offense. Be a if he's coming off the bench, a super spark plug off the bench as well. I think he'd be great. I just think if you're paying him 24 million, then yeah, I just don't think you need to go and pay D'Lo 20 million either, right? That to me that would be a mistake, I guess, in team building. But where are you at? Would you do that move? Would you trade Beasley for Terry Rozier?
I don't like moving down 10 spots like
Yes.
for Terry Rozier. I like the fact that we're adding a guy whose kind of timeline would be a little bit closer to what LeBron's timeline is LeBron and
Mm-hmm.
AD's. He's a younger guy. Again, I don't think he'd be opposed because he's already gotten paid. I don't think he'd be opposed to starting versus coming off the bench sort of thing. He'd kind of get in. Like, I don't know. Like, he's a decent defensive player too as well. He does shoot a high volume of threes. His shot profile goes that
Yep.
way, but he can take mid-range shots and whatnot. But like you said, same issues as a small guard. My only pushback is I would rather have him than Dennis
Sure.
Schroeder. But I mean Dennis is obviously the better.
He also costs like 12, like 4 or 5
Right,
times as much, right? As well.
right.
That's it.
But yeah, like if they were giving us like all of their remaining second round picks, like if it was the 27 and then those other 3 second rounders that they also have, they've got like 5 picks in the draft. I would do it just because I think the second rounders could have some value if we wanted to reflip them for something else.
Right.
But outside of that, I probably wouldn't do it. But because Terry was a name that the Lakers inquired about during midseason,
Clutch
I'm
guy
just
too, I think, if I
oh,
have that right. I believe he's a clutch guy too, if I
he
remember.
might be. I'm not sure. He might be clutch. If he is, that's even more news for it. So I'd be curious to know if he does. But I could if D'Lo is going to come back for 25 million, I'm probably just going to roll with that option instead of losing picks.
Yeah.
Would you do it if it didn't involve picks? If it was just Beasley? What if they gave you a pick? If it was Beasley and Shaq, you have to take on Terry's contract, and they'll give you the 27th pick.
Ooh, I think I would do that for sure. I
Okay.
don't think you're getting a better deal than that. Because
Okay.
basically you're just trading Malik Beasley for Terry Rozier, and you're getting
And you're getting a
compensation
first.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why. I mean, I guess Charlotte would want to just get off money or open up the minutes for Scoot. I guess
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So
Because
I guess there's
Terry starts right now. That's part of the
Exactly.
issue
Yeah.
for
Definitely. If that's what it was, I think I would do it. I just like I value the 17th pick in this draft at least. I think it's supposed to be a really, deep draft and just give the scouts, their highest selection in a while. So I wouldn't do it for that, but if it was no picks involved, then yeah, I think I would. I would trade Beasley.
or if you got picks back. What if they give
Or
you
got
3
picks,
second rounders?
but you give up 17.
No, you don't get. We don't give up any
Okay.
picks. We only get picks.
Yeah. Oh, I think I would do that.
Yeah.
I don't think you're getting a better option, one for one from Malik Beasley versus Terry Rozier.
Okay.
I think the year after next year is only partially guaranteed as well for him.
Yeah.
So it's not a terrible contract either. I'm not saying it is now. It's just, yeah, I think I would do that. I think
Cool.
Rozier for Beasley makes your team better.
Yeah, sounds. Yeah, I think and Beasley for anybody who could be like an impact rotation guy could probably, and I think Rozier was also part. He had a deep run with Boston that first year. I want to say that Kyrie was there. He might have been part of that deep run that they went on. But yeah, okay. So just keep it. Any Lakers front office folks that are listening to these spaces, you guys can go ahead and take credit for that, and the ones that are coming up right now too as well. Another familiar name that we were visiting was hotly and heavily pushed to the Lakers for a long time, but eventually quieted down and was shut down at the end of the season. Bojan Bogdanovic over with the Detroit Pistons. He signed an extension, $40 million. He's getting 20 this coming year and then 20 another year after that. Would you trade Malik and the 17 for Bojan Bogdanovic? Now, let's say Detroit wants to sweeten the deal. Like, look, this probably is a little bit too one-sided. We're going to send you back the 31st pick of the second round, which is like the very top of the second round. Would you do that? Move down 14 spots. Would you get Bojan instead of Beasley?
Man, I would really think about that. That's a really tough one. It's crazy. I think so. Before the deadline, I remember I was really asking, like, go give a first round pick for Bojan Bogdanovic, and I think you were against that, if I remember correctly.
I was against giving up the first round pick for certain players. Bojan wasn't one. I was like, I'm okay with getting him.
Okay,
if
maybe they were asking for both first in that situation. Or something like that,
I think at the time the Lakers sucked, so I was just like, dude, this first pick might be high, so I don't want to look.
Right. Yeah. No, I would definitely think about it. I don't think I would move down 14 spots to get 34-year-old Bojan Bogdanovic. He was great for Detroit last year, actually. But I think he got hurt at the end of that as well.
Yeah, we'll say that he got hurt.
Or maybe they rested him.
They rested him, yeah.
But that's definitely the type of win not move I guess they should be looking at. And that's really tough.
He's your starting four.
Yeah. But again, you have Rui, Bojan. That's not too much of a holdover, I guess. Yeah, that's really
also
tough.
very, very good LeBron insurance for when LeBron doesn't want to play games.
Yeah, I worry about the age though. At 34, yeah. I do worry about that with him. I worry about him breaking down on team. That's already kind of old at the top. Might sound crazy, but I don't think I would trade down 14 spots for it. What do you think? Am I crazy?
No, I think it's reasonable. It sounds like a trade that Rob would make, though, honestly. Like the 17 for the 31, because when you get them in the second round, then there's no cap hit on your actual books. Like there would be a cap hit, there's a cap hold for the 17th pick because it's a first round pick.
Right.
So it's like if Rob, like it just like after the Danny Green and the whatever the first rounder it was that we sent for Dennis.
Yeah.
Like this kind of feels
Jaden McDaniels.
Yeah, this kind of feels like in the same vein of that kind of trade where it's like, okay, we have this guy that we don't really want, but this team may think the first round is really valuable, and we can get the guy that we've been trying to get because the Lakers were trying to get Bojan at one point. They were trying to get him out of Utah before he got moved there. So maybe the Lakers take those three second rounders that they got from the Thomas Bryant trade and they offer those up. If we can do that, then I'd definitely be on board as opposed to giving first.
100%.
But yeah, it might be tough to pick wise to incentivize that play. To
would you drop 14 spots for Bojan? when you put it like the spots that you drop, it makes it
Yeah,
very interesting, right? Because you just 31, like you're still in, like, you're not in the first round, but you're like a pick after.
right.
I think in this draft, it like matters. The way I kind of contextualize this is like the guy at 17 is probably some the Lakers had maybe at 10, right? Like that's the
Fair.
way I
Yeah,
think about it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, and maybe higher or maybe lower. You never
yeah,
know in those situations, but usually the Lakers draft board is not going to match exactly what the draft board that actually
right,
occurs, right? So the way I think about it is like, yeah, the 17th pick, maybe that's the number 17, but the guy they had on their board is probably like 10 or 11. So when you put
right,
it to me, when you put in those type of numbers, it's like, well, now if you drop to 31, then maybe that guy's like 16th on their board. You know, like
right.
that's the kind of way I look. I just don't know when we'll have the chance to draft this high, which is why to me the trade has to be so. The trade has to move the needle to me enough, right? Right, where like instantly you're like, oh, that clears up a ton of our issues, right? Does Boyan help? 100%. Does he fix like our main issue? I mean, we had some trouble shooting, but like I don't know that he moves that needle to me enough to where I would move the 17th pick for it. The opportunity cost of what that 17th pick would be. So I'd probably lean no, but that's again another tough one. What is your like final answer on that?
Yeah, I think I don't know. I'm actually kind of scared. I think that would be like one I probably if I was a GM, I probably just wouldn't do it just because I'd be too scared it would cost me my job.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, this one's just too risky. Like if it goes the wrong way.
Can Rui, Boyan, LeBron, and AD play together?
Yeah, because Boyan can play the
Okay.
two. He like I've seen Boyan play.
Can you defend the
He
two?
he can't defend it, but I've
Okay.
seen him go shot for shot with Luka Doncic before. So
Yeah.
he can run pick and roll actions as a ball handler. He can shoot it. He's like cut from that FIBA Euro ball cloth that like the NBA is trying to go
Right.
to. He is instant offense. I mean, like he was playing well in the playoffs for the Jazz too as well. Like when
Yeah.
he was there,
Sure.
again, Anthony Davis
He,
resolves a lot of your issues defensively.
he was also just always hobbled at the end of those Utah
Yes.
series too. I remember
Yep.
like he was always on like one leg or something going on with him, which again, older guy, you kind of expect that. The reason I ask those questions because I think that's how this offseason should be framed. I think can
Sure.
they play with Rui Hachimura and obviously Austin, LeBron, and AD because that's the guys you're going to invest real money into this summer. So like
Mhm.
to me, all the guys you bring in need to be able to kind of coalesce with them. So that's I think it's. I think you're right. I think he can play with them. I don't think I dropped 14 spots for him, but
Okay. No,
I
it's
would
fair.
I would think hard about it though. I would lose some sleep. I would have some sleepless nights about that.
Okay. So
We'll
I've got a good one. I've got a good one for
oof.
you. This will be the last one. I'll give you this third one. This one I have been workshopping with some folks behind the scenes
Mm,
to see if this one makes sense. Would you trade Malik Beasley and
mm-hmm,
the 17th pick
mm-hmm.
for and Shaq for Dorian Finney-Smith and
Oof,
Royce O'Neal from the Brooklyn Nets? No picks coming back.
oof. I've heard this one floated too. I think the Nets also have like a really late first in there. I think they have like
They have two. They have the 20. They have the 21st, the 22nd, and then they have the 51st pick of the second round.
if they throw 22nd, I'm doing that for
Okay.
sure, 100%. I think that makes total sense. For the
What
Nets,
what if they say we'll give you the 51st?
no, that doesn't do it for me. I would like at least
Because
one pick in the first round.
because Brooklyn's mindset is we need as many first rounders possible
Mm.
because we want to get Dame, and we have to
You
make
think they
sure
want
that
to?
we
You
get
think they
Dame.
want to go for Dame?
They do. They do. I know they do. They're trying to go for Dame.
I've heard that. I just like I don't understand it from the net. Like you
Sure.
just got out of a superstar relationship. Not saying that it's the same, but like
Yeah.
you just left that situation. You want to run back into
Yeah.
like you just left the flames. Like you're alive. You want to jump right back into the into that fire and
It's
just
hard to get stars, man. It's hard to some teams just. I mean, and Brooklyn has just a lot of first rounders from like the Harden trade and
sure.
obviously the
And
KD
they
trade.
have no incentive to be bad, right? Their picks
Yeah,
are
right.
encumbered by
And
other
Michael's
but
good, bro. Like Michael, like the 27. I did this write up for Complex. Like Michael Bridges, 27 games after he played for the Nets, he was like a 50, 40, 90 player, averaging almost 26 a game. I was like, dude, this guy, you just replaced KD with KD right now. Obviously not exactly that way, but
Mhm.
statistically you have. So it's like you might have something here that you can't waste your time on.
Right. I just keep I mean, I understand Dame's one of my favorite players in the league. Maybe might be my favorite non-Laker. I
Yeah,
just keep Mikal Bridges, and I was screaming that Mikal Bridges was a star
yeah,
well before he got paid. But yeah, that's really interesting. I think Royce and O'Neal are kind of what you need, basically. Like, it's the
yeah,
exact type of guys you need, and maybe that's the cost of the 17th pick. I I still think I would probably keep, unless they throw one of those first. I still probably would. This is the closest one though, where I'd probably pull the trigger, but I'd really
sure.
think about it. How about you? What do you think?
Yeah, if they give me the second round pick, I'd probably do it. Either that, or
Ooh,
I would ask
okay.
them to give me a future first. That's like your
Mm,
worst first. Give me
okay.
your worst future first, from like the Harden or the KD trade that you don't want. But I tried to get a later first back, but obviously in any of these cases, any of these trade scenarios,
Right.
I try to get a later first back instead of nothing at all. But this would be a trade where I would be more inclined okay with giving up the 17th
Same.
pick to compared to the other two trades.
So Royce, I think they gave a first to get him, right? They gave
Yes.
a first to Utah to get him. So I'm sure they would at least want that
Mhm.
back, I'm guessing, because they have no reason
Yeah,
to just give him
they
away.
absorbed him into the traded player exception
Yeah.
that they had. They sent the first to Utah and then just without having to send any players, and they absorbed it
But
back. So
but again, just gutting your like doing that and then gutting that for Dame. It's just like just that's just like that's an insane thing to.
yeah,
I mean, they're better than Portland, but I mean, what are you winning with that? But yeah, like I would really think about that. And I think those are the exact type of guys you should go for. Rose O'Neal and Dorian Finney-Smith. That's like those are two like stable rotation guys that you can
yeah,
throw in. That probably won't, that'll probably contribute more than the 17th pick would next year. I think we have like the Warriors were, preaching this two timelines thing, and
yeah,
I'm not saying that at all. I just think like again the opportunity cost of like where you are at. I think it's really
right.
tough to plan that out when next year the Pelicans kind of have decisions on our
Yeah.
first round pick next year.
And there's a minutes part of this too that like the Lakers actually have to consider, right? Like you're gonna have to split minutes between like
Mm,
Austin, D'Lo, like Beasley, where like Christie's gonna need minutes eventually. Like he's showing promise, like he should get some minutes and stuff like that. Whoever we grab in the second round may end up being an impact guy based on our draft record. Any undrafted guys that we get may be, guys that are helpful too to some degree. So it's just like you have to kind of think about it from that standpoint too as well.
yeah.
When you think of these sort of things.
And then like again, I just keep going back to like again the 17th pick isn't it's not a star on like
Right.
it's you usually don't find a superstar there. It's just a Lakers drafting record, and then also our history, right? You talked about the one to OKC. I think they comparing that to Boyan, I think they really thought Dennis Schroeder was like a stable
Yes,
point
I
guard
believe
for
so
their
too. Yeah.
future, right? Like he was a 26-year-old guard. I remember Zach Lowe when we got Dennis Schroeder, he's like, good teams aren't usually able to get talent that young. Like
Yeah.
they're not able to go and fetch that type of talent. A young guy who has high upside. That's what Dennis Schroeder was, at least before he went and had his tour around the league. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, like so I think about that. I think about a guy like Jaden McDaniels, right? Who that pick became
Yeah.
the Dennis Schroeder pick became Jaden McDaniels, who might be one of the best defenders in the league. And so like again, that deal would have to really take you over the top. I think Royce O'Neal and like Dorian Finney-Smith, those are guys that add. Do they move the like how far do they move that needle for you?
Mhm. I mean, they supplement the wings, right? So now you don't have to
Yeah,
put pressure on Max Christie to perform. Again,
sure,
you're trading Beasley, so you're trading some guy who might not have as much value to your regular season rotation for guys that can really play in your regular season rotation. But it does create a logjam, right? So now you have Dorian, you have Royce, you have Vando, you have Rui. If Braun is going to miss games, that's fine because we can just slap those guys in there and we can figure it out. And D'Lo and Austin can handle the ball. Royce can actually handle the ball too. He's got some point guard skills too as
yeah,
well. So it's like I like the ability. I think it gives enough bodies for a guy like Ham to be able to interchange. Like when we had to bench D'Lo, our replacement option was Dennis. Like that's not a really great
sure,
replacement option offensively and defensively. But if I have to bench D'Lo for Royce or who am I thinking of? Dorian Finney-Smith. Like I get some semblance of it. The other thing is like these are also kind of tough. I don't know if Royce is, but Dorian Finney-Smith is a tough guy. Like we're adding
I was
more
gonna say that.
toughness to our team,
Both of those
which
are
is
gamers. Both of
yeah,
them are gamers to me.
right,
Royce, I've seen him go at. I think he was going at Paul George in the Utah series a little
yeah,
bit a couple years ago. I'm not saying that's the definition of toughness. It's just a guy that's game for those moments. Jordan Finney-Smith as well. He's a big time
right,
shot maker and a defender. So I think those are the exact type of guys you should be going for. I have a tough time when I frame it as like, hey, this is a guy the Lakers could get, a guy that they deemed lottery in one
right.
of the deepest drafts maybe in a very long time. I have a tough time going like, yeah, let's give that up for Royce O'Neal and Dorian Finney-Smith, as great as those guys are.
Yeah,
And so I think just a chance to get to infuse youth on a team where you're already like so old and you don't have much of young foundation. Austin Reeves is your young foundation, but he's like
yeah.
24, right? So like just to infuse like whatever young foundation you can, and try to get a guy that can help you next year. And beyond that, I think that's so tough to pass up. And these are tough conversations. Again, though, if they throw in 22, Vinay, I think that's a yes
Oh no,
right
for
away.
sure, for sure. If they give
Right?
us, any one of, if they give us the 22, and all we do is move down 5, like I would do that. Like, don't even ask
Yep.
for approval from anybody. Just go agree to it before Jeannie can say no or like ask you for details, or the Rambuses, whoever's in charge now. But so Raj, those are the three. I had more, but for the sake of time, because we're
Mm.
running to hour 40 now. Like those were the three I had that were all names that were rumored at one point attached to the Lakers potentially, prior to the D'Lo trade, that happened at the deadline, and they're also still potentially available. And there's a couple days left until the draft, and the Lakers have a decision to make when the draft is over, and once it hits July 1st. There's some time after the draft. Once it hits July 1st, the new CBA rules come in, which
Mm-hmm.
means that we can't bring back 125% of the outgoing salary, like in the scenarios that we just did right now. In the new, once the CBA changes over to the next season, the rule is 110%. So these trades will be some of these trades won't even be possible if in the new CBA. So the reason why we saw the Suns make that trade for Brad was because they could guarantee Chris Paul's salary up to exactly the number that they needed to get it to be able to add Brad to the Suns. They can't. It'll be very difficult for them to do that, if they had waited after July 1st. So Lakers do have an opportunity to make some changes, make some decisions whether they want to keep the pick, whether they don't. You and I both would like them to keep the pick, but obviously, as you can see, if there's a really good opportunity out there, you have to think about whether they should keep that pick, especially if they can get a later pick instead and move down a couple of rounds, and whatnot. But did you have any other last thoughts before I
Yeah.
sign us off?
Yeah, so I had one name that I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Again, Mitch Kupchak, our good friend, comes back. He's like, "You didn't accept my Terry Rozier offer."
Yeah.
But so he comes back with Gordon Hayward.
Yeah.
So I think Beasley and Bamba get you there too, right? I believe if you're going for
They
Gordon
should. Were they
Hayward.
26?
Hayward's at 31 next
Yeah,
year.
they get you. Beasley and Bama combined will get you there.
So he comes up. He says, "Look, I want to move up in the draft.
Yeah.
We have no use for Gordon Hayward next year. Um, give us 17. We give you 27 and Gordon Hayward, who's expiring next year. So I want to move up 10 spots. Are you doing that for Gordon Hayward?"
Damn, I would need more compensation to take on Hayward.
Even as an expiring.
Shoot, that's tough. That's a yeah. He is an expiring. You're right. See, I think we can extract value out of Mo. That's my only pushback. Like I think he can be a backup center for the Lakers. But if I had no option whatsoever and I'm still getting back the first rounder, I'd probably do it. Like Hayward can play the 2 for the Lakers.
Right.
And I've openly said that Austin is a point guard. We should stop using him as an off-ball 2 and just let him run the 1 for Lakers. That would give the Lakers a lot of size. He's 6'5". I think Hayward is 6'6", 6'7", I want to say. That would be a really big team. Hayward, I would, assuming he doesn't get hurt himself, would be some insurance for
that's a
the
concern.
Lakers. That's the only other issue. If we could get them to throw in like a couple more second rounders to take Hayward's salary,
Yeah.
I definitely consider it, just so that we can get some more youth on the roster.
Right. I was just thinking like if you're gonna do the Boyan one, I'd rather just go and do this Hayward
Fair,
one, right? I think Hayward's better
fair.
than Boyan. You have the injury concerns as well. Just another guy to me. You put him in a real situation. Like I don't think he's been playing real basketball for the last 3 years.
Yeah, at all. Yeah,
Especially he's probably on a team where he relates to no one.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you know,
He definitely
so
doesn't. He's
so
yeah, he's the
yeah, you
adult
know
in
what
the
I
room.
mean. So yeah, adult and more than that on that Charlotte team. So I wonder, like, you put him again on a winning situation, a team that cares, is trying to win. He can be the secondary playmaker, third playmaker, can hit open shots, can drive to the rim. Just as an all around game to me, where would fit beautifully around 2 stars.
Interesting.
I just
And
think he's
new
been wallowing
ownership.
away,
New
huh?
ownership in Charlotte. There might be
Yeah.
some new owner syndrome over there too. They might be ready to actually give up the picks and just be like, yeah, you could take the 3 second rounders in the 27.
Yeah, and we talked about this. Like, I think this like Brandon Miller versus Scoot Henderson thing. Like, I feel like Charlotte's gonna give the keys to Scoot Henderson.
Yeah,
Not buying the Zion stuff either. We didn't really talk about that, but I'm
yeah.
not buying like Charlotte. I don't know if you are, but I'm not buying Charlotte giving number 2 for Zion Williamson. I mean,
I would have been more on board. Actually, dude, now I actually don't know because we should let's save that for we'll find some
sure,
more time to cover that.
yeah,
We'll
yeah, yeah.
discuss it. I definitely have some theories about that I'd
Right.
like to
And
discuss because
that
I think
wasn't my point. That wasn't my
yeah,
point either. It's just like I think Charlotte's gonna get. My point is Charlotte's giving the keys to whoever they get at number
yeah,
2, and I
yeah,
think that's Scoot Henderson. That's where I think all these other ball handlers, Terry Rozier, you brought up Gordon Hayward. I just to me like they want to give him the keys and see how
yeah.
fast he can
They
go.
need minutes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, well, Raj, this is fantastic. You successfully completed a game of flip my contract. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully, the folks listening along, hearing the logic behind why we would do the trade, why we wouldn't do the trade, how we evaluate guys. That ended up, was a fun exercise for everybody to do. We'll probably try and do some more rounds of this, unless we get some certainty around, what's going on around the league or
Hmm.
with this Lakers roster. But as always, Raj, this was awesome. This was a lot of fun. And we both want to thank the folks that listen in on the space and the folks that are eventually, end up watching this video on the YouTube, if you guys prefer it in that format, or the folks that support us on Spotify and Apple. The channel continues to grow. And if you guys missed it last time, we are partners with YouTube now. We haven't done anything with it, but eventually we're going to do some stuff that's going to be like exclusive to the folks that are very, loyal listeners and subscribers, and just cool stuff that we kind of know that happens behind the scenes that we can share with a more private audience as opposed to publicly like this. But as always, we appreciate all the folks that are listening in. We hope you have a wonderful evening and a wonderful day whenever you end up listening to this. And if nothing else, we'll catch you in the next one. Take it easy.
Peace.